Christ Connection Church exists to equip its members to carry the message of Jesus Christ into their world. That has answered the last question. How do they find it? That's how we find it. We become his feet and his hands and his voice, right, into the world. That's how we find it. If we're expecting the world to come in here and waiting for that, we're going to get older. But if we go out to them, and out to them just means life, our lives, and how our lives are lived. That's where the gospel is spread. 2 Corinthians chapter 11. If you have your Bibles, and your homework for tonight is to read 2 Corinthians chapter 12. And I want a book report this time next week. If you can send this in to me, just give me an outline of the book. I'm kidding about the book report. We don't really do homework, but the thought of 2 Corinthians chapter 11 continues into 2 Corinthians chapter 12. It's hard to separate them. They are both, there's a continual thought there. Even though they're separated by a chapter in our English Bibles, they're really not in the author Paul's thought process. Who here has been to Disney World? Most of you. Who's been to Disney World more times than you would like to be at Disney World? Yeah. Who comes back from Disney World refreshed? Encouraged and stuff. It's not really a type of place where you get refreshed. When you go to Disney's, you see it all the places on their signage, and you look in their website, it says, where dreams come true. Where dreams come true. My family goes to Disney World a lot. This past summer, I actually fall on the sabbatical. I shared the first service. We went to Branson, Missouri, which that's another state in the country. I didn't know there was any other states but Florida. I didn't really know there was any other cities but Orlando. But we went to Branson, Missouri. We had a beautiful cabin on a lake for 2 weeks, and that was where I spent 2 weeks, the last couple months of my sabbatical was at that place. The first thing my 7-year-old said, walking into this beautiful 6-bedroom lodge on the lake, which had a moose head and an elk head and a deer head and some other dead animals around the place. The first thing she said to me, he goes, "Mommy, why are we doing a boy vacation?" Yeah. And I was like, yes, finally a boy vacation. Because I am so sick of Disney World. I know all the princesses. I know them all. And my video thing is full of all princesses. My personal favorite is Rapunzel. I know she's a new on the scene, but she's really cool. I like her. This is the best day ever. Remember Rapunzel? Have you ever seen it? I've seen it 52 times. But I just want to get my mind back. Okay, focus, Timothy. Okay, there is where dreams come true, and I think there's in every Disney movie has a happy ending, doesn't it? It wouldn't be Disney, and that's sad. Most of the ones, anyway, have a happy ending. I think sometimes we make this mistake in our evangelical salesmanship to make our Christian life, or our Christian life on earth and its experience, always have a happy ending. We talk to people and maybe sharing the gospel, sharing our story with them, and he goes, and there's joy unspeakable, 1 Peter chapter 1. There's peace that goes beyond understanding in Philippians chapter 4. But then if I ask you a real honest question, do you have that peace that goes beyond understanding? Don't say it out loud. But sometimes when I'm sleeping. How about joy unspeakable? Yes, sometimes when things are going good, I have joy unspeakable. When things are going good, when things aren't that good, and maybe I wouldn't say it's unspeakable, but it's stuff. So here is the problem, I think. The problem with this as a Christian living in the world 2013 is the world is full of pain. Must I convince anyone of that? The world is full of loss. The world is full of heartache. And thank God that we as Christians are exempt from it all. Thank God that we as Christians, we don't have loss. We don't have grief. We don't have heartache. We don't have internal pain because we're Christians. And we live a Christian life where dreams come true. But then when we're really honest with ourselves and we start living and we're alive for a while, we find that, The stuff I face, the rest of the world faces too. Now, I'm speaking to a church in America. I mean, if we were into another country in the third world, you know, there are starving Christians that live in boxes in the third world next to starving non-Christians that live in boxes in the third world. There are people that are the recipients of political persecution that are Christians and non-Christians. Non-Christians lose parents. Christians lose parents. Non-Christians experience death in their life, in their families. Christians experience death in their life, in their family. What am I getting at? The experience of life, that four-letter word. Being a Christian does not make us or exclude us or make us exempt from anything. We still live it. The devil, in this spiritual warfare series, loves to take our theology, where dreams come true, in our experience, when they don't match up, and cause a spiritual disillusionment. Or, as I'll call throughout the message, a demonic disillusionment. Now, this is a warfare message. This is a sophisticated warfare. Last week we talked about the devil's attack on our flesh. We defined what flesh was and our needs for affirmation, our core needs that we had in our creative being through Adam. And that could become something pretty base, or that becomes something just emotional. But the devil loves to look at human flesh because he knows how we're wired and attack that. So I'm not really aiming at that today. I'm aiming at people, I'm aiming at the disciple. Jesse Penn Lewis says a lot about this. I'm talking to the person who have counted the costs and said, I want all that God has for me. I want to serve him with my energy in life. I'm talking about that person, even though this would apply across the board. This spiritual disillusionment is a sophisticated warfare. It is so subtle, yet it hits you like an atomic bomb. You can take the wind out of your spiritual lungs. It can stop you in your spiritual walk, right in your tracks. It can stiffen your knees so you're just limping. It's disillusionment. It can induce even the most ardent believer. Read the history of some of the great men and women of church history. You'll find they had great periods of time where they went through spiritual disillusionment. Sammy Morris, coming off the mission field after 25 years in Africa, losing a child and losing his wife, comes back over on a ship with Theodore Roosevelt, the president, who was big game hunting in Africa. It's on the same ship. When they get off the gangplank in New York, there's a band and there's the press welcoming the president home after his hunt. And the people there that pick up Sammy Morris never showed. So he stood on the dock, disillusioned. He said, you know, God, I spent my life on the mission field. I lost that which was most precious to me while I was there. Could there not be just one person to welcome me home? And he helped the Spirit of God, spoke to him and said, Samuel, you're not home. That's yet to come. Disillusionment is defined this way. A feeling of disappointment. Listen to the definition. It's very succinct. 1823 Webster's. A feeling of disappointment akin to depression arising from the realization that something is not what was expected or believed to be, possibly accompanied by a philosophical angst. How do you say it? Good enough to me. from having one's beliefs challenged. So it's the sense of disappointment arising from a realization that what I thought was going to happen didn't happen. How I thought this was going to play out didn't play out that way. How I thought my life was going to go didn't happen that way. I thought my life was going this way, but then I got a doctor's report that changed everything. I thought this was going to happen. Then I lost somebody I really loved. I was going to go this way, but then I found myself with this issue in my life I never had a thought I would ever have to deal with. Had a situation recently where these folks were going to go out to the mission field. I don't know them personally. I know the story. And they were of older age. They were probably in their late 40s, early 50s, and we're going to go to the mission field. And all of a sudden, a child, one of the adult children, has a baby that it can't care for. I'm going to go to the mission field. What? Mission field has changed. It just changed, isn't it? Disillusionment, if we're not careful and understand the warfare. Oswald Chambers said this: we pin our faith on a plan of salvation which can be expressed in words, and we glory in it. Then we find that it does not work, and a curious disillusionment begins. In other words, this is God's plan for my life, and we follow that, maybe from a young age or whenever our race starts. But then it doesn't happen that way. And then this curious disillusionment begins. Now in 2 Corinthians chapter 11, and you really need to read chapter 11 and chapter 12 to get the full orb, the real picture of what's going on here. But what's happened is some false apostles, false teachers have entered the church at Corinth. And they were influencing the people of Corinth. They're taking their money and they're saying Paul's not the real apostle. We're better apostles than Paul. And it's really neat. If you read this in a New Living Translation, and it really reads out actually pretty comical how Paul defends himself here. And so Paul goes into an elaborate defense in chapter 11 and chapter 12 on why he's the real apostle and they aren't the real apostle. And I think the reasoning he has is significant. There's numerous reasons he has, but his primary argument here will be as follows. Let's watch this. Starting in verse 14. I'm going to skip through the different passages, leave a lot of verses out here. But I am not surprised about these false apostles. For even Satan disguises himself as an angel of light. Make no mistake about it. Light is more dangerous than darkness will ever be for the disciple. Sometimes darkness, people fall into darkness, and that's one thing. But for the Christian that has counted the cost, they yet to fear the light. Because the light comes looking okay. The light comes sounding okay. The light comes reasonable. The light can even come spiritual, or at least what we think is spiritual. Deception is just that, it's deception. Satan will not tiptoe into your room and tap you on the shoulder and say, Tim, I'm planning on deceiving you Tuesday at noon. Just want to be aware. I want to be a good steward of your time. And so please, no. Deception means we're deceived. We're not even aware that we're deceived. And if we're not aware that there's a plan to deceive every Christian, look at the video I posted on our Facebook page that the McKees sent me. Where are they? There they are. Sorry, I got the wrong side of the chapel. You were sitting behind me before. Now you're over here, and it's quite telling. I'll show it for you Wednesday night, I think, if I remember. So he disguises himself as an angel of light. Verse 15. So it is no wonder that his servants also disguise themselves as servants of righteousness. In the end, they'll get the punishment their wicked deeds deserve. Are they servants of Christ? I know I sound like a madman, but I have served him far more. I've worked harder, been put in prison more often, been whipped 3 times without number, and faced death again and again. Let's stop before I read the rest of the passage. Know what he's saying here? And he goes on in chapter 12 with the same type of argument. He's looking, guys, if you want to know who the real apostle is, if you're comparing me with those other guys, forget about all the other things I've said up to that point, which I haven't brought out. Look who suffered the most. Look who has the stripes on their back. Look who has had the most pain and suffering in their life. Wow. This is the apostle of grace. He says, this dispensation of grace has been given to me in Ephesians 3:2. He's the one that was knocked off his horse and taught by the Holy Spirit himself in the Arabian desert for 3 years. Taught this gospel. He's the one who convinced the other disciples it was a free gospel to enter the Jews and the Gentiles in Acts 15. He was the one. He says, you want to know why I'm the guy? Why I'm the apostle and those guys aren't? Let me tell you why. Verse 24. 5 times the Jewish leaders gave me 39 lashes. What's 5 times 39? Don't answer me. Think of the number, though. 3 times I was beaten with rods. Once I was stoned, and that's nothing to do with legalized marijuana. Some of you guys are like, yeah, I know. No. Once I was stoned. 3 times I was shipwrecked. Once I spent a whole night and a day adrift in the sea. He's given his resume of why he's the real apostle. I've traveled many long journeys. I have faced danger from rivers and from robbers. I have faced danger from my own people, the Jews, as well as from the Gentiles. I have faced danger in cities, in deserts, and on the seas. I have faced danger from men who claim to be believers but are not. Then besides all this, I have the daily burden of my concern for all the churches. Who is weak without my feeling that weakness? Who is led astray? I do not burn with anger. If I must boast, I'd rather boast about the things that show how weak I am. God, the Father of our Lord Jesus, who is worthy of eternal praise, knows I'm not lying. When I was in Damascus, the governor under King Archelaus kept guards at the city to watch me. I had to be lowered through a basket in the window, through a window in the city to escape him. I wouldn't call that the prosperity message. I wouldn't call that a spiritual version of Disney World. That's a man who endured much. We'll see more about that maybe a little bit later on in the message. Now, I have 3 basic entry points, and you can add more to this, but this is for the sake of this morning's message. 3 basic entry points where this demonic or spiritual disillusionment can come and penetrate a Christian's life. The first one is this. When I made my Christian life, this is the entry point, about doing things for Christ and not about Christ. That's an entry point for disillusionment. If I put my trust in good works, which not good works for salvation, because we understand in Ephesians 2:8, every Christian understands, I'm saved by grace, we do understand that. But we act as though we're saved by grace and the rest is up to me. That's how we act, that's how we think, that's how we manage our Christian life. When our sanctification, becoming more like Jesus, is just as much a work of grace as our justification, being declared righteous before God. So we understand that it's not my good works. I get frustrated. And 1 of 2 things are going to happen. When I look at my good works, I'm going to be frustrated this way. You're not doing what I'm doing. That will frustrate me. I'll become disillusioned. How come I'm the only one carrying the torch? How come I'm the only one with the sword drawn? How come I'm the only one serving God with this level and putting these many hours in? How come it's me? I'm frustrated. I'm the only one doing anything. Feeling disillusioned? Went soul winning one time with somebody, and we were out there, 5 or 6 of us on the streets, and they said, finally someone just goes, how come we're the only ones out here? Because God gave us grace. to be the only ones out here. And thank God we're the only ones out here. And thank God for those who aren't out here. Right? So that's the first thing. I'm going to get frustrated with others of what they don't do, or I'm going to get weary in the way. I'm going to realize when I hit about 35 years, 40 years old, believe me, I watched this, I'm going to get weary. I'm going to realize I'm spinning my wheels. I'm working. I'm tired. I've been working so hard for Jesus, I'm not sure I even know him. I've been so busy for him, I've never spent time with him. I wave at Jesus. Hey, Jesus, I'm doing stuff for you. Hey, Lord. Lord, just sit back on the throne. I'll take it from here. I don't need you, Lord. Just relax. I got you. I got your back down here. See, before a believer gets involved in Christian service and doing stuff for God, they need to learn how to sit at Jesus' feet. If I don't learn to sit at Jesus' feet, what am I going to give anybody? What am I going to impart? Me? There's a Greek word for that, about me. Epi stinketh, o my. I don't know if you knew that in the Greek, but I'll teach you these important words as we go around. Epi stinketh, me stinketh. My experiential wisdom, where do I get wisdom? I get wisdom from being in a consistent fellowship with Jesus Christ. That's where I get my wisdom from, by walking in the obedience to the Word of God, which will quiet my heart, not make me the Energizer Bunny. This fellowship that I'm talking about with the Lord, my friend, won't happen by accident. It won't happen by mistake. It has to happen intentionally. It has to happen on purpose. I had this statement to my children in my early part of my ministry. Dad, can we do this? Dad, can we do that? When I have time, after 2 or 3 years of telling them I have time, God tapped me on the shoulder and says, Tim, have you ever had time? Is it ever going to get any slower than this? No. Then make time. The same thing. It's not going to happen unless I determine before I do anything for Jesus, I'm going to get to know Jesus. Luke chapter 10, incredible story, illustrates this. Jesus was just eating, got done eating. He's at the home of Mary, Martha, and Lazarus. Now, some of you don't know this, but I'll get back to that later. And so at the end of dinner, they sit down, they push the plates away, and Jesus starts teaching. God starts teaching. Imagine that. Wouldn't you love to sit at Jesus' feet and hear him teach? We'd never get up. Take our legs, nail them to the ground. It ain't moving. Jesus is teaching. And so in the middle of his message, picture this happening. In the middle of his message, imagine somebody running through the door, tap me on the shoulder. Pastor Kelley, didn't I help me clean up the donuts? They come in and says, Jesus, Mary isn't helping do the dishes. Let me read you the verses right here. I'll tell the whole story. All right. But Martha, verse 40 of Luke chapter 10, but Martha was cumbered about much serving and came to him and said, Lord, do you not care that my sister has left me to serve alone? Bid her to help me. So Jesus says, any questions? And Martha raises her hand. I have a question, Lord. What's that? Thought it was about the Torah. and then he says, Mary's not helping. Now, the word Martha, cumbered about, that word's only used one time in the Greek New Testament, and it means to be driven about mentally, to be distracted, to be overoccupied, too busy to be consistently worrying about a thing. That's Martha. She was cumbered about. Martha's name, translated into English, is Jeanette. I don't know if you realize that, but it's just, again, sharing my deep studies of the scriptures, I'm just kidding. Jeanette went to a restaurant the other day and got a Jack Daniel's burger and told him to hold the burger. That's okay. That's why she's happy. We like her happy like that. So where was I before Jeanette interrupted me? All right. So he said, bid him. He says he was cumbered about. Then Jesus said to her, Martha, Martha, Jeanette. Thou art careful and troubled with many things. He's saying, Martha, you're all stressed out. You're working hard. Thank you for your great meal. Thank you for cleaning up. Thank you for serving me like you're serving. But now, Martha, it's time to sit at my feet like your sister Mary. Verse 42, and one thing is needful, Jesus speaking. Mary has chosen the good part, which shall not be taken away from her. So Martha gets it. Mary gets it, Martha. She's sitting here. She's experiencing me. She's sitting under me. She's letting me minister to her. She's getting to know me. She's getting to know what's in my heart. The dishes can wait. Get to know me, then do the dishes. You know the spiritual principle I'm getting at. I'm into Christian service, taking the world from here. I am into serving here in the church. We need volunteers. We need service. We know all those things. But my friends, don't serve at the expense of your walk with God. Don't serve at the expense of sitting at Jesus' feet and knowing who it is that you worship. Second point I want to get at, I didn't bring this up in the first message. If I put my trust in man, any man, or a church, any church, I'm a candidate for disillusionment. If I'm looking for love, acceptance, approbation, or affirmation from people first and not Christ, I'll become disillusioned. Back in the early 90s, I would call on an assignment to go to a broken church in Massachusetts. The pastor of that church had fell deeply into sin, and it was about a church of 500 adults. The church blew up. When I got there was 30 people left in one of the fraction groups. I remember doing a lot of talking to the different people and realizing my land, they're so disillusioned. They were so confused. This man had influenced them so deeply, and when he turned out just to be a man, they were devastated. I've watched men since then that had the same trust in a man, and because the man let them down, they started second-guessing the core values of their faith. Which I'll get back to that in a moment, because that really answers another question for us, I think. People will and can manipulate other people with their words or their actions to spur on sympathy just to get affirmation, and they don't even know they're doing it. It happens in marriages, it happens in churches, it happens in personal relationships. I'll do whatever it takes to get you to pay attention to me. Which, in a perfect world, let me know if you find one, they would pay attention to you. A few months after we lost our Hannah Grace, I was on Facebook, and I go in there. Usually my life on Facebook is putting quotes that I'm just reading, or I post something that just antagonate Yankee fans. Because I believe that's how God has led me as my calls in my life is to be antagonate Yankee fans. And outside of that, I don't live my life out on Facebook because it's not real life there. It's sort of make-believe and stuff like that. So I don't really do that. But this one day, it was about 2 or 3 months after I lost my daughter, and I posted something that was showing, and my heaviness of my heart and my grief came out in the post. Before you know it, quotes, everyone's loving on me. I remember looking at that, and it's like 100 quotes later, I remember looking at it, and the Spirit of God saying, Tim, don't grieve here. Grieve with me. Find me. Don't live this out here. Then I heard the Spirit speak clearly. Keep trashing the Yankees. Or maybe I was the Spirit, I'm not sure. But and keep putting thoughts about me, edify people for me here. And so I was convicted, and I said, okay, God, I won't do this anymore. I'm not going to solicit affirmation. I'm not going to solicit sympathy. Be a friend to people, because people will do that. A good friend will discern this and point you to Christ. Go to people privately, point them to Christ. Man, you got to find Jesus. Can I pray with you? Can I help you find Jesus? Jesus is your answer. I can tell you 100 times that you're the man. I love you. I'm praying for you. We love you. You're amazing. Although that's great. But if I'm not pointing them to Jesus, am I really helping them? Am I helping them on the road to healing, spiritual health, recovery? I'm not pointing them to Jesus. Sometimes we become affirmation junkies. We do whatever, and this happens in marriages, it happens in relationships, it happens in every venue of life. And I become a candidate of disillusionment because if I don't get it, and I haven't sit at the feet of Jesus, I'll go into affirmation overload. I'll do whatever I can. If I haven't sat at the feet of Jesus, I'll manipulate. I'll do whatever. I'll state. I'll pin people into a corner. Whatever I can do to get something from them that makes me feel good about me. My friends, there's only one safe place for that. And that's sitting at the feet of Jesus. People are a tool God will use to encourage you and build you up. Yes. Let me give you an example of that. Another example I've used before. Back years ago, going through a dark time in my life, I remember laying there in the middle of the night saying, God, I need encouragement. Waking up in the morning, I'm going into this day. People need me to speak to them. People need me to love them. People need me to be a pastor to them. And I'm empty because of different circumstantial things in my life at that point. Don't even try where they are. You don't even know what they are. So God, send me somebody to encourage me. So I get out of bed and I go on email, and there's a sweet letter by a kind man. And then there's a text by somebody else. A couple of them are here this morning. Then I go in the gym. I come out, and one of my pastor friends from another state calls me. Then another pastor friend from another state calls me. Then another pastor friend from another state calls me. I didn't post this anywhere. And I'm just answering the phone. They're all saying the nicest, kindest, encouraging things to me. That's very kind, thank you. And I feel myself, this burden lifting in my heart. And after the 6th correspondence, the Spirit of God tapped me on the shoulder and said, Tim, that was me sending them to encourage you. That's when it's from God. God will send you the right people to say the right things. Just sit at his feet and watch him do it. Sit at his feet and draw near to him. Last point I want to get at tonight. Yeah, this will be good. Demonic disillusionment in the plan of God. Another point of entry for disillusionment. And this is what Disney World faith does. It spins everything so that it's better. It wants a painless Christian experience. And when there is pain, they want to spin the pain. My friends, sometimes there's just pain. How about this statement? I've said it. For people going through things, or somebody who goes through great loss. God is going to do something great. How do you know that? And what is great? What do you mean? He's going to win Bangladesh to Christ? That great? Could that great be somebody who learns to sit at the feet of Jesus? Jesus would call that great if one soul gets to know him. Will it mean the conversion of people? Potentially. But I can't put it in a box. I can't hook my face, I can't teach myself to believe with a slogan that I just don't know if God's going to, it is what it really is. Because sometimes, my friends, it doesn't seem like much comes out of anything. I've talked to so many parents in the last 12 months who have lost children. Not one of them told me anything they thought was great came out of it. I'm blessed to have a foundation in my daughter's name and to be able to keep her legacy alive. But I'm the exception, not the rule. Some are left just with the loss. Now, will God turn everything into good? The Scriptures promise that. He just never tells us when good will happen. He never tells us what good really is. Well, if God trusted you with this pain, you must have been able to be trusted. I should say, you must be able to be trusted with this. Well, maybe. But like I said, I've known some really good men that became disillusioned for one reason or another. And now they're out of the race. They quit the race. They quit serving. They quit what they've always believed. And the same things happened to them that happened to me. How's that work? It doesn't mean, my friends, that they're able to handle anything. Evil sometimes happens. Life happens. Pain is real. Loss finds all of us at some point in our life. I talked with a man not too long ago, and he's a very candid man, older than me. He lived his life for a while, and he just said, you know, Pastor, I look and I just haven't suffered. Not like what you've had to go through. I've lived a pretty good life. My parents lived long, and they're still alive and healthy, and my marriage is good. My kids are good, and I haven't suffered any really health issues. And he goes, I've lived this life. He's older than me. I've lived this life, and I've had very little stuff happen. I've had very little pain or stress in my life. I had good jobs, no financial issues, anything like that. Why is that? I'm a little jealous. Because of grace. Because I don't know why that is. Here's the 14-year-old in the Sudan. Loves Jesus. Memorizing the Bible. Trusting in his promises. Gets caught by Muslim extremists and skinned alive. Why did that 14-year-old go through that? And this man that lives in America hasn't suffered any great loss at all in their life? I know this is hard. I know it's difficult. But this is true. This is real. It doesn't mean our faith is in vain. It just means it's real. The Apostle Paul had his head chopped off. Peter was crucified upside down. James was run through with a spear. They weren't disillusioned. They knew it was coming. Polycarp, a disciple, first century, disciple of John, the Apostle John, burned at the stake. All the disciples but John died a death of a martyr. Served him, walked with Jesus, believed in his mercy, understood the gospel. And they all thought, my friends, it was worthy. Where's the divine protection? In those cases there wasn't. Sometimes there is. Where was the prosperity? Sort of blows holes in the whole prosperity message, doesn't it? You give and God's going to give. You know, that doesn't work much outside of America. See, here's the difference, my friends. Heaven wasn't to be avoided. Heaven was their reward. Those great gifts, those promises that God gave us, may apply to the here and now, but I guarantee they'll apply for all eternity. Our Christian faith was born on blood. There's death that brought this gospel throughout the world, so now there's billions of believers. There was sacrifice. There was not selfishness. Grace, my friends, in the early centuries was never used as a license to do or an option to do or live how I wanted to live. Grace was used as a means to die for the faith. Grace encouraged people, gave them strength to face danger, to face death, to face uncertainty, to face delusionment. Grace gave them the ability to look death in the eye and say that you have no authority over me. Take my life. I'm okay with that. Because I'll live forever in eternity. Then all the promises of God will be realized. Up until that point, we just don't know. Our reward is not here. Even though we may sense some of it, we may receive some of it, and yes, you might. And I pray that you do. But this is not our home. We were never intended to prosper here. We were intended to spread a word here, a gospel here, a message here that says that we can live forever. And then we will finally find a home that there is no death and no more pain and no more sorrow and no more tears and no more goodbyes and no more broken families and no more divorce and no more disease and no more cancer and no more aches and pains and no more surgeries. That's our home. Right now, this is not where we belong. Daniel 7:25 says Satan wants to wear out the saints to the Most High, and that's what he wants to do in your life. He wants to wear you out. He wants to harry you, plague you, cause confusion in your life. How come? Why, God? Why me? Did I do something wrong? Did they do something wrong? Who's to blame? Disillusionment will take our faith away. It'll strip us of hope. It'll get us out of the race. But when we think clearly, it's not about now, is it? It's about later. The now is to take this gospel of hope and bring it into my world. The Christian life follows no path. I'll close with this. The Christian life follows no path. The Christian life follows no system. The Christian life offers no guarantees in time and space. Nothing in this natural world. Grace is not only a declaration of divine acceptance, and it is. It's also a means of divine energy and divine purpose. It was never simply meant to become a life based on itself. It was meant to live a life with a divine resolution. I wish I could tie this up in a nice package and put a bow on it. I wish I could send you out and, yeah. And maybe you'll do, yeah, I'm going to die. Oh, hope it doesn't hurt. It might not. I'm not sure when you're going to die. I'm not sure there'll be one martyr amongst us. I have a tendency to think we'll be raptured before that happens. Some will disagree with me, but they're wrong. And I hope they're wrong anyway. I pray that they're wrong. And so I don't know those things, but I know this, and I've learned. Any questions I have, any system I put God on, he's broken. Any program I told him to follow, he has disobeyed me. Anything I thought he was going to do, he's never done. Everything I told him he should do, he hasn't done. In fact, God has not followed my script, my plan, once. He's just left me hanging on. And I'm left with this. I'm left with hanging on to Jesus. Jesus, I don't understand. I don't get it. Because I know you don't. But will you trust me? Will you keep walking? Do not cast away this confident trust you have in the Lord, Hebrews 10:35 and 36, my life verse. Knowing the great reward they'll bring you. Patience, endurance is what you need now so that you will continue to do my will. Then receive all that I promised. Heavenly Father, thank you.